Hi there. Thank you for joining me in Breaking Barriers, Accessibility Tools in the Classroom. Our focus is going to be on tools that we can leverage with all of our students. But before I get into that, I would like to take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Nicole Cassmassino. I am a digital learning specialist for a K-4 elementary school in New Hampshire. I have been in this role for 12 years, and before that, I taught third grade and then fourth grade for a combined total of 11 years. Now, as I go through this presentation, there's going to be a lot of information shared. This shortened link right here will give you access to this slide deck so that you can access any videos that are there and any other directions. You'll also notice there are a lot of research articles or studies that are linked within this presentation too, in case you're interested in that information. So all of those things will be available to you after you finish with this recording. Before I get into some of the other nitty-gritty, what I would like to talk about is captions. And captions can be really important for not just students who have a hearing disability, some hearing loss, but perhaps it will help keep students' attention. Or maybe there's something off in the background that is distracting students and they can't hear everything you're saying. So Google Slides has its own built-in ability to create captions on the fly as you're talking. So here I'm in present mode. And when I come down to the bottom left and I click these three dots, I can go to caption preferences and I can toggle that on and off. I can choose the position of the captions. Do I want it to go at the top of my presentation or the bottom? And then I can also choose the size of my text. So I'm going to leave this as the default for right now as we go through this presentation. So here you can see it's starting to pick up my voice and typing what I say. It's not going to be perfect. It may misunderstand some of what you've said, but that's okay because it's going to get the general gist. There are no punctuation marks as you go through, but again, it's giving that option for students who might need to be able to read what you're saying as well. Now, captions are not only available in in Google Slides. You can also put captions on within Chrome, the browser, on a Chromebook or on another device that you're using Chrome with. And those videos you can see are right here on this screen. And it walks you through exactly what to do. So you can take a moment to take a look at those if that's something that you're interested in. So I want to explain a little bit the difference between assistive technology and accessibility, because there is a difference. Assistive technology is something that is required for a person with a disability to perform a task or to be successful. It's required by law. Typically, it's written into their IEP or their 504. This can be high tech, like a braille machine or a communication device. It can be as low tech as a pencil grip or a squishy seat. If they need it to be successful and it's required, it's called assistive technology. Then we get into accessibility. And accessibility are tools that are designed for a lot of different users. This is not a requirement. These are for students who aren't necessarily on those IEPs and 504s and that they can benefit from, in addition to students who are getting it as assistive technology. So my focus is going to be on accessibility with our students. Now, as we go through, I want you to think about programs that you use, because a lot of programs are starting to develop their own built-in accessibility tools and features because they recognize that they're helpful for all of us. If you think about the phone you use, whether it's an iPhone or an Android, A lot of times, perhaps you, or I know when I'm walking in a store, people are speaking their texts, right? They don't have to type them anymore. They're speaking them. On your device, you can select the words and you can have it read to you. You can change the font size on your phone. Those are examples of accessibility features. Well, programs like Book Creator and Nearpod and ReadWorks, PebbleGo, Newsela, just to name a few, have features that are built in. And students are going to see the universal icons for those different features. And I'm going to show you what those icons look like as we go through this. Now, if these programs are thinking about our students and their learning, then there's no reason that we can't either. When you look at the column on the left, those are the students who we usually think, okay, these are the students who are going to need those accommodations. They're going to need to have something read to them. They're going to need to be able to speak what they want to have written. They're going to need to have their colors inverted. Well, that is not just for the students on the left. Take a look at the list on the right. There are other factors that can affect student performance and participation in your classroom and in your activities. And these factors can be pretty disabling for some students. For example, anxiety. If you have a very anxious student, they're going to have a really hard time overcoming that in your classroom and being successful and possibly showing you what they know. So all of the tools that I'm going to show you can be accessed by any student. So I like this cartoon here. It's a pretty good example of why would we take the time to plan a lesson or shovel the stairs for every other student, and then think about our students who need those accommodations and go ahead and then adjust our plan for them when we could just shovel that ramp. The custodian is shoveling the stairs, not thinking about the fact that if he shoveled the ramp, everybody could get in. So those are things that we should take into account as we are lesson planning. Teach all of your students how to use those accessibility tools. Build it so it meets everybody's needs. It's going to make your classroom more inclusive. It's going to provide options for every student. And in the long run, it's going to create less planning for you. So I have an activity here that I would like for you to participate in. So if you do not currently have a piece of paper or a pencil, I would like you to go ahead and grab one. It can be scrap paper and can be any writing utensil. Pause it here. And once you have those things, I want you to restart to continue and participate in the activity. Okay, welcome back. So here is the activity. You are going to be writing something that I'm dictating to you. However, as you're writing, you are going to replace each A with the @ symbol, each S with the $sign, and each E with a capital E. I'm not going to go any faster or any slower to try to trick anybody up. I'm just going to talk at what my normal speed might be when I'm teaching in a classroom. So here we go. Dyslexia is a language-based learning disability. Dyslexia refers to a cluster of symptoms which result in people having difficulties with specific language skills, particularly reading. Students with dyslexia usually experience difficulties with other language skills such as spelling, writing, and pronouncing words. I'm going to stop there. I did kind of slow down a little bit. I said I wasn't going to, but I did. So take a minute and think about, how did you feel as you were trying to write that? Probably frustrated. Maybe you gave up. Maybe you got angry. Maybe you started thinking about something else. Maybe all of a sudden the vent in the ceiling was super noisy and you started to pay attention to that. So we need to think about those things for our students. And this is where those dictation and speech to text tools come in handy for them. They don't need to think about what they're writing physically. They get to just think about what their thoughts are and putting them on paper. In addition, if you are lecturing, why not just give them notes afterwards? Students who are really focused on making sure they're getting down everything you're saying or what they think is important, they're going to miss a lot of what you've already said. So give them the notes afterwards. I want to talk about dictation. So dictation, speech to text, voice typing, all of those things can be used interchangeably. Now, there are a lot of programs out there that allow you to do this. Like I said, programs are starting to build this in, and the universal icon for dictating is that microphone icon. The color might be a little different, but for the most part, that symbol is universal. I'm going to show you how this works with a Chromebook. So this is what it looks like on a Chromebook for that icon. And there are accessibility settings on your Chromebook. If you come down towards the time and you click on the time, I already have accessibility turned on right here. However, if it's not there, and I do this with my students. Now remember, I'm K-4. I do this with 2nd through 4th graders. I do it with 1st graders on a case-by-case basis. So if you click on the setting icon, that little gear, it's going to open up your Chromebook settings. And over on the left is accessibility. And I'll give you a little tip. If you're looking for something and you're unsure where it is, just come up here and search it. I do it all the time. Saves me lots of minutes. I'm going to click on accessibility and I'm going to turn this on. Now, while we're here, I want to show you that a lot of these things that are available on the Chromebook have other specific settings that you can come in and personalize by student. So those are things that you're going to want to explore for each individual student. But today we're just going to kind of go through the basics. So once this is turned on, I can click the X here. And now you're going to see that right there for you. Now, when you click on that accessibility icon, there's a lot of choices. Now, are students going to want to see, ooh, what is this? Absolutely, they are. They're going to want to try to figure out what all of these are. I'll tell you, if a student is running into an issue where they're like, I don't know, my screen is huge. What do? I don't know. There's this circle showing up. Check their accessibility and see what's checked off, because I bet you they accidentally clicked something on. So I have all of my students turn on select to speak and dictation. The rest of it, I talk to them about the fact that these are things that if they really need to use it, then they can have a conversation with their classroom teacher and with me, and we can work on them with that. So you see the icons are right down here at the bottom. And I'm going to show you exactly how these work. I have a website up on Giraffes. And this speaker icon, and that's the universal icon for having something read to you, so whether text to speech or select to speak. And right here is our microphone icon, and that is for dictation. And dictation works in a document or any other area that students need to type in. And that's really important to keep in mind, because I find that the Chromebook dictation feature works in a lot of other programs, including the curriculum programs that we've purchased as a district. Students can access those activities and use this dictation button to get their thoughts across. Now, like I said, I introduce this to all students. So I go into 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade classrooms, and they are introduced to how to use this microphone. Obviously, it's scaffolded because I don't do the same thing with them in each grade level. But I tell them they can all choose to use this tool at the same time. And it's not going to affect the person next to them because they don't need to scream into their Chromebook. And I show them exactly what I mean. So when I click on this microphone, what happens is it starts recording immediately. And you're going to see a white box with some audio waves in it as I'm speaking. And then when I'm all finished speaking, I'm just going to click on it again to stop. So let me show you what I do with my students. Today is Tuesday, period. I have heard on Thursday that the weather is not going to be great, period. I wonder if we will have a snow day, question mark. So not super loud, just a very quiet voice. And you'll see there's a little bit of a lag. It could be my Wi-Fi, could be my Chromebook, but students just need to be patient and trust that it will catch up with them. When they first start, I have them just do sentence by sentence. So they say a sentence, they stop. They think of their next sentence, they stop. And then I do take time to show them that they can go back and they can make their own edits. So this is not going to be perfection for them immediately. They're not going to be 100% comfortable with it immediately, but it's something the more and more they use, the better they're going to get at it. So now why would we use select to speak or text to speech, right? So we've just talked about dictation. Now let's talk about this icon down here, the select to speak or text to speech. I'm going to come here. There we go. Okay. So when I click on the speaker icon, it turns it on. And I can come up to a web page or my document because I do have students do this with their document. And when I click and drag, it draws a box.
What are giraffes? They are the world's tallest mammals. They are uniquely adapted to reach vegetation inaccessible to other herbivores. Unusually elastic blood vessels and unique...
Okay, so I'm going to click down here to turn that off. So you see it will read whatever the student has chosen to have read to them. And they can have it read to them as many times as they need. Now you'll notice that I had to turn it on down here and turn it off down here. In those settings, you can make it so that when it is speaking, so let me turn it on again.
What are giraffes?
Down below the purple box, there's a stop and a pause and a speed up and a slow down. So it all depends on the student and what you would like them to see. So why should we allow them to use select to speak or the text to speech option? Students need visuals and auditory. There's a lot of research that's been done that shows that bimodal learning has a major impact on student success. And you can just see from this list here, I don't need to read it off, what has been shown to be improved if students can not only hear something, but they can see it as well. And it's pretty powerful when those things are highlighted, those words are highlighted as it's read to them. Now, again, select to speak, I have found that works in almost every program. So again, this is a built-in Chromebook feature. So our reading program, if we want to have a story read to them and it is not available, then we use select to speak as they're logged into their digital platform and it will read that passage to them. So super useful and something to consider showing all of your students. I highly recommend it. Now, with that being said, for our dictation, for our select to speak, that's okay. There are times where you may say to your students, guys, we're not using either of these tools today. I really want you to read this yourself. I really want you to write this yourself. That's okay, because they still need to have that experience of reading and writing on their own. And it all depends on what you're assessing at the time. And that's how you will make the choice. If you don't mind if a tool is used, you can give them the choice, or you can have them use it till they get used to it and decide if they want to or not. Now, students, they're going to think it's fun and great the first few times that they have the opportunity to use it. But eventually they're going to learn whether or not they actually need to use it to improve their learning. And if they don't need it, then they're going to stop using it because it's just going to take them more time to get their work done. Now, I also I'm going to get into a little simulation here. I have a couple to show you. One is on auditory processing. So again, this is where that ability for select to speak is helpful because things can be read over and over again to students. It's also where captions come in handy so that students can read what is being said. So let's take a look here. This is an auditory processing disorder simulation.
There was a boy named Jack and a girl named Jill. They were both brother and sister. They were both instructed by their parents to get some milk at the market since they ran out this morning. Jill put on her blue coat as Jack got his hat. Jack was all ready to go, but his shoes to play. Eventually she decided and off they began their adventure to the market. Along the way, the dog street and the friends did. Knowing well that they needed to be home soon before it got too dark out, he left. Jack opens the market and says, "Wow, that's so cool." Jill comments, "Yeah, I could just..." The crowd grabbed one and eat it. They finally made it to their time for supper and at the dinner parents about their small adventure to the market.
So see if you can answer any of these questions. We'll just go through one or two of them. So I've found that pretty powerful. And in thinking about it, it not only has to do with those students who have those auditory processing disorders, but for our highly distractible students, even for students who maybe they have a cold and their ears are clogged. So many different things can cause us to have some issues with our auditory processing. And that's where our captions and our select to speak can be beneficial for students or anybody else, really. And actually, before we get into that, I want to show you another simulation. So we're talking about select to speak. Let's take a look and see what it's like to be a student who has dyslexia. Now, obviously, every student experiences dyslexia a little bit differently, but this is just an example of what students may be experiencing as they are trying to read in a book or copy notes from the board, lots of difficulties. How about students who don't really have any background knowledge, right? Or maybe they are our ESOL students who English is not their primary language, right? They're going to have a really hard time understanding what they're reading. And then let's take a look at our students who have trouble with concentration and are easily distracted. Now, of course, these things are not going through on their papers and on their screens, but these are things they're thinking about. They're distracted by them, by their own thoughts. We all experience it at some time. Again, all these accessibility tools can help them overcome these things and be successful in the curriculum. And that's what we want. We want them to be successful, be able to learn, and be able to show what they know. So here you're going to see 3 videos for 3 different programs that would allow you to add audio to things that you are creating for students. One of them is Moat, and it integrates with Google seamlessly, including Google Classroom. However, it's one of those things. It is a paid program, and I believe you do 20 motes for free a month, and that might work for you, and that might not be enough. The other one is an online program, 123 Apps Voice Recorder. This site, 123 Apps, actually has a lot of other tools that you might find useful, so spend time exploring that. But this allows you to record audio and then go ahead and download it to then use in things that you are providing to students. And then finally, Screencastify is a Chrome extension. There is a free version and there is a paid version, but Screencastify lets you create audio files as well. Okay, so here is just showing you where you can find the accessibility menu on a Chromebook. Again, I told you all those directions and videos would be here for you. So here is the accessibility menu, how to find it. It also tells you how to find it on the Chrome browser in case you're not on a Chromebook. And right here is just a list of all of those features, and it explains what each of them does. I'm not going to go through each of them. I do want to point a couple out because I do find that students accidentally turn these on. Sometimes they're pushing multiple keys and not realizing it, and it's a shortcut and it turns something on. So right here, automatic clicks. This actually, as a student, let me turn it on and show you. Automatic clicks. So here you have this menu, and see that circle? When a student stops somewhere, it's automatically clicking for them. See, now my screen is going crazy. I'm going to come back and turn that off. It's super helpful for those who need it, but for those who don't need it, it can be more of a distraction and be a little bit more frustrating. Here are additional settings you may or may not have seen that some students have discovered. Their mouse cursor, making it larger, coloring it, those kinds of things. I know that I find, a larger mouse cursor helps me as well. So you might find some of these accessibility settings are for you. But right here, those are all of your settings. Other things to consider, not just your accessibility settings within the Chromebook, what Google is deeming an accessibility setting. If you have a student, and this was the case with us, we had a student who was very impulsive. They would open the Chromebook, and before you could even give a direction, they're clicking wherever they want to click. They're moving their cursor. It's going crazy. So what we did is we went into the trackpad options within the Chromebook settings, and we slowed down the speed of the trackpad. And that means that as this student goes to move the cursor, it moves slower across the screen. It doesn't move quick, doesn't matter how fast they swipe their finger across their trackpad. So this has helped with that student's impulsiveness. So be creative with some of the other settings on your Chromebook or what other device is being used by students. Okay, so these are things I talked about in the beginning. Why not design things so that they are accessible to every student right from the get-go? And font matters. Font is first an experience that is visual perceptual for us. We have to recognize it. We have to know what it is, and we have to do it really quickly so that then we can figure out what those letters and those words are. It's our messenger, and it kind of activates the reading voice in our head. Now, there is an educational therapist. You can see here, Dr. Bonnie Shaver-Troop, and there is a link to her website, gives her whole study. And she did a study on font and how it affected learners. And she discovered that Lexend, which is a kind of font that she created, is better for students than what we typically use. Now, why does font matter? Well, it matters because it can make things easier to read for students. It can improve their fluency. It can reduce their eye strain. Again, can. It's not going to solve every issue, but if we can make it easier for students, why wouldn't we do that? And what's hard about these next few things that we're going to share is, the fun and the pretty fonts, not always the best for learners. And we really need to pause and think about, well, what are our students' needs and not just ours and what we like and we think is pretty, because those things make a difference. Now, as I show you the Lexend font and you explore it, if it's not something you absolutely hate it, then I recommend looking for fonts that don't have extra strokes, because those strokes can be more distracting to your students. And again, one font's not going to be the best for everybody, but why not give a running start to some of our students? And the video on this screen right here is going to show you how to set your font. So let's take a look at the Lexend Deca font. So here is Times New Roman, and that is a pretty popular font. And what happened is Dr. Bonnie, because now I'm spacing her last name, did a very small study with third grade students, 19 of them. And she chose a reading passage that was 2 grade levels above third grade. And the font size was 16 for all of it. And she had each student read those passages in these different fonts. Again, you can get more information on the website that's linked. So here's Times New Roman, 16-point font. 2 of those students had the best score with Times New Roman. Now, when I say the best score, I'm talking about their correct words per minute, right? So they had the best score with Times New Roman. Here is Lexend Deca. Again, 16-point font. 2 students in the class read better, so the most correct words per minute for them with Lexend Deca. Now, as I change slides, I want you to pay attention to that font and what happens to it. So here you have Lexend Exa. 1 student did better with that, right? Not the font I would choose to use if I'm creating things. Lexend Giga, 9 students did best with Lexend Giga. That's huge. I would consider that as I'm developing, my documents or my presentations or things that I'm giving to students. And if you take a moment to look, this font, the letters are spread out a little bit more. There's more spacing between the lines. Lexend Mega, 5 students, another one. And again, it's just the spacing, the size of the font. It's very simple. Now, you can set a default font within Google Docs, and I recommend that you do that. This video shows you how, but basically what this means when you set a default font is that anytime you start a new document, then it's going to be the font that you've set. So you'll notice that when I did our dictation on here, it was automatically Lexend Deca at font size 12. Well, that's because my default font is set to Lexend Deca. And that's something that gets changed up in our format and under paragraph styles. Now, that's for normal text, but you can also set fonts and highlights and whatnot for all of these things. So I highly recommend you take a moment to set your default font in your docs. I also do this with students. So if you know you have students who benefit from larger font, different type of font, take the time to help them set their default. That way it doesn't need to be changed every single time a document is opened. Saving clicks is saving us minutes, and saving minutes is pretty important. Now, unfortunately, Google Slides does not do the same thing. There is not a way to set the default font so that it is always that when you open a slideshow. However, there is a way that anytime you go into a slideshow, you can set a master slide. That's what this video shows. I could do a whole hour just on that, but I recommend setting your defaults in one slide and making this your master, and then making a copy each time you go to create a new slideshow, so that your default fonts are set. So in addition to font, we need to think about readability, and that has to do with our background color. So hard. Look at the background color here on my slideshow. This is not one that I would typically choose at all. I actually set this background color based on results from this study of people with and without dyslexia, and what was discovered as far as which background color made it easier for things to be read. It's very interesting. It's linked here. And surprisingly to me, peach, orange, that does not look like orange to me, and yellow were the backgrounds that were more readable. It made those passages easier to read for most people. Now, I do want to say that blue and green and blue-gray, those ones had the worst readability, which in my mind is ironic because a lot of students who are evaluated for vision issues often find that having a blue background makes things easier for them to see. So I will say that while we want to think about, well, what might be best for most students, if you have a student who has a specific need and that blue background is in their IEP or their 504, then I'm using a blue background for everything, for everybody, blue paper for everybody. Of course, unless I have another student who requires a different color background, then I'll need to do it for that student. So again, this is not going to be perfect for everyone, but we want to build it so that everybody will be able to access things a little bit better. If you remember back to the beginning, I had talked about there's a lot of different ways to do dictation or to do select to speak within various different programs. You may know already that right within Google Docs that under tools, there is voice typing. And when students click that, it brings up a microphone that they can click on and record themselves. Now, what's nice about this is you see there's a drop down here. They can change the language. So for example, if they speak a language other than English, they can open that up, change it to the appropriate language, go ahead and speak in their language, and it will type their words in their language. I don't know another language, so I can't show you that. Now that's great for them. However, what does that mean for you? So it's in a different language. Wonderful. Now I can't understand it. Well, that is where Google's Translate document comes in handy. Now, this can be used to take a document a student has written in their language and translate it for you. We have also used it to help communicate with parents. So we've written maybe an email in a document and then used this tool to copy and paste into the email so that they would understand it. We've also used this so that we can communicate with students. So for example, let me show you. Let me pull up this document. So perhaps we've had students, and we're thinking about young students here who do not speak any English, and they're coming into school for the first time. And for example, second grader doesn't speak any English, started the year. She was very upset in the very beginning. Nobody could understand her. We couldn't communicate with her because she couldn't understand us. She was not a reader, so that was a struggle as well. So what we were able to do, and yes, it took some time, is we were able to type directions on here. So maybe put on your jacket, right? Whatever that might be. And again, works for emails or anything else you need to do. What you're going to do is you're going to come down to tools, translate document. You can rename it. It's making a copy of your document. So your original is still there. Choose the language that you want. Maybe French. Translate. It's making the copy. Whatever you have typed here, it is now available in a document. Is this perfect? Probably not. Does it get the message across? Absolutely. Now, I will say I'm using select to speak.
Mettez votre veste.
Okay, you have a non-reader, select to speak, we'll read it in their language. Right? Great way to get around those communication issues. So translating a document, another great accessibility tool within our classrooms. Now, something that I know myself included don't always give a lot of thought to is the pictures that are included in things, whether that's a website or document or slideshow. If you put an image in and you have a student who needs a screen reader and that's like a program that literally reads everything on the screen, and that is Chromebook in the accessibility settings, it will read everything on the screen to them. You need something called alt text. And that basically gives a description of the image so that they can visualize it in their head and get the same information as everybody else. And you add alt text simply by right-clicking onto a picture, and it brings a box up and lets you add a brief description. So that's just something to keep in mind as you are developing things for students. And I would really say that taking the time to do that, I would consider, your students who are actually using screen readers. You might not have that student, so you might not take that time to do that. Now, along with the screen readers, when you are developing a Google slide, you know that there are text boxes that are already on each slide. And these are magic boxes. And these magic boxes work with screen readers. And I'm going to show you an example of a screen reader in a minute, but work with screen readers. I don't know what Google does. They sprinkle a little bit of magic so it works. If you delete those boxes, like I used to do, because I would click new slide, I don't want those boxes, I would delete them. I would go and I would put my own text boxes in. Those text boxes are not magic, and screen readers don't recognize them, and they will not be read to students. So I recommend keeping those magic boxes and editing either each slide as you go, or going back to the slide that has the video on how to edit your master slide for your font if you don't like the way specific slides are built. So here you're going to see, there's just a list of different shortcuts for students. And those shortcuts are can be really important. They're time savers. If you have students whose motor ability is affected, they struggle with it. Even if you have a student who has broken an arm or a hand or a finger, shortcuts save them time. Shortcuts save us time. So it's beneficial to learn what the shortcuts are for those commonly used things like copy and paste, Control-C for copy, Control-V for paste, printing, Control-P, all those kinds of things. You're not going to remember every one, but what you can use saves you time. Okay, so Read and Write is a Chrome extension, and it's a purple puzzle piece. You can see it right up here. And there's a free version. there's a paid version, and it allows for voice typing. It will read things to students. There is a built-in translator. It will allow students to hover over words on websites in order to determine what that word is, or have it read to them, I should say. So let me show you. Now, I do have the paid version, so all of these features are not available for everybody. So I simply click on the puzzle piece, and here are my options. I can turn on hover speech, and let's see.
They are uniquely adapted to reach vegetation inaccessible to other herbivores.
Right, so whatever I hover over, it's going to start reading from that place. If you are able to get yourself a paid version, actually teachers can go ahead to, it's Text Help is the company, and every teacher gets a free paid version, but you would need to pay for students to use it. And I know a good starting point, which is where we started, is thinking about your special education students and buying a license for each of them so that they can have all of these great tools to use. Now I'm looking at the time, and our time is short, and it's kind of up because we were just doing an hour. Real quick, without getting into specific details, these next few slides are going to show you some features of Google Keep. And Google Keep is absolutely amazing for students to use. So especially if you have a student that has an iPhone or uses an iPad, if they have the Google Keep app, they can take pictures of their notes or their PDFs or their worksheets, and they can grab text from those pictures, and it can convert that text to students and put it into a document. So you can take some time to look at that video as well. It's great for note taking. So that page is dedicated to that. And I want to give a plug for visuals. Here are some websites that you can use to get icons or emojis. I put them in my Google Classrooms to help make things stand out to students. So let me show you. It's super helpful for any student, no matter the age. Let's see if I can come up with an example here. Might this be one? No, bad example. Let's do this one. Right, so I can put those emojis and images in my topics. I can put them into assignments as well. It is just a really great way to draw students' attention to specific things and help them find things. You'll notice here that my font is also different here in Google Classroom. So you can actually, find a font generator and copy and paste and put it into Google Classroom there. That's just a quick thing, makes it a little bit more accessible for everybody. Color coding as well is super helpful in Drive and Keep if you kind of keep those colors the same. So that's something to consider as well. And finally, what I want to do is I want to give a plug to Bookshare. And Bookshare is for any student on an IEP or 504. So this is not accessible to all students. You have to qualify for it, and it is federally funded, and it is free to anybody who qualifies. That's students, that's adults, anybody who can qualify, has a print disability, a visual impairment, some other physical disability, like you're not able to hold a book, qualifies for Bookshare. So this is a great video that shows you exactly what it's about. But Bookshare will read books to the students. So any textbooks, any novels I might be reading. Anything students might want to read for pleasure can be pulled from Bookshare, and students can access it on a web browser. There is an iPad app called Voice Dream Reader that is amazing. And then you'll see some other options on the Bookshare website as well. But if you are not familiar with Bookshare, that is definitely something that you want to look into. Bring it to the attention of your special educator. If you're not a special educator, really, if there's like one thing you get out of this, Bookshare is pretty huge. All the other stuff is as well, but Bookshare, if you don't know about it, take a look at it. Right, a couple other extensions for you. And then I have a bunch of other resources listed on the last slide for you as well. And here is that shortened link that will allow you to access this presentation. I appreciate you spending time with me. Lots of information, I know, lots to digest. Choose one. Choose one thing, get comfortable with it, get your students comfortable with it, and then move on to the next thing. Don't try to do it all, because then you'll get overwhelmed and you won't follow through with any of it. Again, thank you so much for joining me.